You're listening to Real Facts on Real Estate with Sean Patrick Maloney.
This sounds good.
Welcome to episode 4, Writing a Competitive Offer to Get Accepted. This week I want to talk to you about writing a competitive offer that's going to get accepted, so I'm going to talk on the buyer's agent side of things for the week. First and foremost, when you're writing an offer, you need to identify who the offer is going to. Usually we use public record for this. On the public record, you'll notice there, it'll say the name of the seller. It'll also say the address. Make sure you don't just write the address of the property and who it's written to, but write the address of the owner, where they actually live. It's down lower on the public record. First, you're going to have to write in what property you're offering to. There, you're going to write in the address of the property, any unit number or identification number. If you have the long form zip code, use that, as well as map, block, and lot number. If you decide to use those, that'd be great as well. You're also going to have to put in your brokerage name as well as your name there to identify that you introduced them to the premises. Purchase price. Purchase price is a really important one, but also not the only important one. So remember, whenever you're writing the purchase price, you want to review with your client how much an appropriate purchase price would be. The way to do this is you could run a comparative market analysis for your buyers. You could also use a Zestimate as well as an RPR tool. Using a bunch of them will give you the most accurate number. Remembering though in the purchase price that if you're going to do seller's concession or anything else we'll talk about in the future, to compensate for it there. While you're writing the offer, you're going to need a deposit. The first deposit usually ranges between $500 and $3,000. The stronger that is, the stronger the offer is. Always remind your clients, you don't want to be broke during the purchase of a home, but also deposit is fully refundable by all the different contingencies that are there. So if you're not just planning on walking away from this house, you should be okay. Usually $1,000 will get the job done in the spot. The next box down you're going to have to fill out is the additional funds that are going to be given at the time of the purchase and sale agreement. Back in the day, it used to be 5% typically. That was when people were putting 20% down and 5% covered mostly the real estate commissions and made the deal a lot easier to manage. Nowadays, people are putting 3.5% down as their down payment on the home, so asking them for 5% deposit just isn't going to happen. So there, usually 2 to 5% will be accurate, but if you have a competitive marketplace and you have really competitive offers, a higher number there may win out the seller's opinion and get the acceptance of the offer. You can write any amount there. If the amount of money there ends up higher than the actual down payment, then the buyer may get a refund check at the closing. But remember, the more money you put down there, the more risk you have. So if someone puts an inappropriately high number there and they have to walk away from the deal, they may have to walk away from that deposit. So it's not always advisable to just put them there at a huge deposit unless it's going to win the deal and they really, really want the house and they have no reason to back out. Also, always remember when writing an offer, if they're going to be using legal advice, you may want them to engage early and have them involved in this, especially if they keep asking you details on certain specifics. You really want to be careful here. You can advise them on this, on the offering, on the offer price, on the deposit, but remember, you're not a financial advisor, and remember, you're also not legal advice. When we're writing an offer, we're going to have an offer deadline. The duration of offer or offer deadline is something oftenly misused by agents. As a buyer's agent, you don't want to just write in the quickest date and time possible, unless you think that you realistically can get this property off the market now. But realize most of the time during a competitive marketplace, they're going to have an offer deadline. If there's an offer deadline, make sure that you make your offer valid until the expiration of that offer deadline. Shorting the offer deadline, if you're going to try that method, feel free to do it, but make sure you have a second offer and you hit send on time so you always have a valid offer, because they may not accept it based on the fact that it cancels out. But if there's a submission deadline and you don't submit the two of them, you may not get in either. So that's why it's just worth following the rules and guidelines of it. The other thing is, being a buyer that reaches out to the seller and asking them what they ultimately want makes you seem like a better person and makes you seem a little easier to work with and will strengthen your offer. The purchase and sale agreement date is something that both parties agree upon. Here on the offer, we usually do 12 days after the accepted offer. The reason for this, it gives them some time for home inspection, and then after that, they get into the purchase and sale agreement. At the purchase and sale agreement, you're going to have the other deposit. On the other deposit, that 3.5% down loan, they may only do 2 to 3.5% down. Those 20%ers may do 5% down. You're going to need to know that number above. That's going to be due the day of the purchase and sale agreement. And again, that's written to the escrow agent, which is the listing agent. So next, we got the closing date. The closing date is something where right here we can really make good with the seller. As a buyer's agent, if we call the seller's agent and we say, what's the best time for them? They may say, I'd love for my children to close out school this year in June. How about we close in July? Or they may say, I need to get out of here right away. Can we close sooner? So there again, we can come out as the better party by reaching out to them and saying, what's a good closing date for you? Again, if your buyers need to get in the house now, you may not be able to do this, but if you have the flexibility of time, there's no reason you can't strengthen your offer by having a closing date that aligns with them. This is a great one to use when the person has a suitable housing clause, because if they're worried about finding a house and you give them an open-ended closing date that's good for the next 6 months, they feel a lot of peace in their mind when it comes to finding a house, and they're going to work with you. So that can get the job done. Even though you're not the highest purchase price, you're the most flexible to their closing needs. So again, when I'm writing offers, I don't always advise them to do a low purchase price by any means, but I am telling you other things that can strengthen the offer, as well as sometimes if you don't have the most money, you can just put them in there to win when you know that you're coming from behind on the situation. The next person down you need to know is the escrow agent. The escrow agent is the agent that's going to hold the money. That's always done by the listing agency. So when you need to write the checks, you write them to the listing agency's name. They're going to deposit those and hold them for safekeeping. If there is a time where the deposit needs to be released, it's going to take a mutual request to release fund form, which needs to be filled out by the buyer and seller, stating that they both agree what happened and who gets the liquidated damages or who doesn't get the liquidated damages, and the return check goes to the buyer. Contingencies are a spot where some agents think they're just a standard issue item. Well, they're not. On the Mass Realtor form, they have 2 contingencies listed. They have a mortgage contingency and a home inspection contingency. I'm going to go over those 2 first. On a mortgage contingency, the amount that's financed, that amount is the amount of total purchase price minus the amount of down payment. Not the amount of deposit, but the amount of down payment. So you take the total purchase price, you subtract off the down payment, and that's going to give you how much money they're financing. The commitment letter date is a date where the bank has committed the funds for your buyer. So now your buyer is good to go and they can close, and at which point when we make that date and we have that commitment letter, this mortgage contingency disappears. That date is usually 7 to 14 days ahead of closing, but remember, if you get a long-term offer where you might be closing 3 to 4 months out, you may be able to get them a commitment letter early. So, little education on commitment letter. Commitment letter is going to lock them into the funding, so it's going to drop the mortgage contingency. So the longer you can hang on to the commitment letter, the more secure your buyer is for anything happening, if banking rates change or anything like that, where they're not locked into the deal and they can still walk away if the mortgage fails through. But otherwise, there's really not too much protection to it, and ultimately, if they want the house, this shouldn't really matter. So having an earlier commitment letter date is not a bad thing. And when you're going to be looking at it as a seller, they're going to look at it as, oh, they're committed earlier. It's going to strengthen the offer a little. So if you can get that early commitment letter date, you might as well get it. So always reach out to the mortgage professional. Always look to them for the closing date, the mortgage commitment letter date, and any other important dates to do with when the money's going to be available. You're going to need to know an application date for your client for when they're going to do a formal mortgage application. This we usually do 1 to 2 days after the signing of the purchase and sale agreement. If it's on a weekend, then I'll obviously push it off to a Monday, maybe do it 3 days out. But otherwise, 1 to 2 days out, they're going to do that. At that point, the bank's going to order the appraisal, and they're really going to get processing the file. And this is where they're going to start the whole process of working towards that commitment letter. So make sure that your client follows this date, just like every other date on this contract to purchase or offer to purchase, as we call it. It's very important that you follow them. And if ever you're going to miss a date, it's not very hard to get extension paperwork. Get the extension paperwork, get it signed, circulate it around to everybody, and make sure that you keep it in contract. If you let any of these dates fall out, you do have the risk of losing your client's deposit, and it will be on you, and chances are you may even be sued. The home inspection contingency is next. The home inspection contingency is giving them the right to have the home inspected. Usually we do 10 days for this. But remember, if it's a property that's unique, or you're in a marketplace where it's super busy, or the clients are away, you may need a longer home inspection time. Also remember that you may not need a home inspection, or that you may not need as much time. Depending on what you choose there, that could strengthen the offer. Dropping the home inspection is one of the most powerful tools, aside the purchase price, to make an offer stand out. Dropping a home inspection should never be advice we give on the fact that we're not the legal team, but it can be advice that we give to strengthen the offer. If you're going to have the home inspection dropped, I usually suggest getting in there with a contractor ahead of putting in the offer to find out if they see anything wrong with the place, and if they do see anything wrong with the place, figure out if it's going to be written into the offer that is to be fixed before the transference of the property. But never, ever, ever give your clients the instructions to drop a home inspection, because it can really come back to burn you if there's trouble with the house later, and it may be a strike against your errors and omissions insurance. So for the purposes of writing the offer, 10 days usually works out for everybody involved. Make sure, though, that you tell your buyer get right on it once you get the offer accepted, because sometimes in busy times, it's hard to get the exact day and time that you want, and it's important for them to be there as well as you to be there to look at the property. If you go on the home inspection and you don't want the seller's agent there, you do have the right to request that they give you your own space and everything. It can make the home inspection go a little smoother. Do remember during this inspectionary period too, your client should be going down to the town hall, looking through all the different folders and files to do with the property to check on the permits and the legal files that town has on record in the building department, the environmental department, as well as the health inspectional services department. There may be a few others you need to check depending on the town. You also can have contractors come in. One of the most powerful tools to remember is if you have a home inspection go bad, and it's in your offer that you have a home inspection, you really want to get a contractor to come in and give prices on that home inspection item, so that way you have legitimate purposes of why you're going to argue it. So let's talk about a few other contingencies that can be added to this. One of them that's really commonly being added is a home appraisal contingency that says the property must appraise at or above purchase price. This protects the buyer in the aspect of a rising market can make multiple offers, chase a number way up to an unaffordable rate, and then the bank won't finance you, and you're stuck putting a bigger down payment to make the entire deal happen, or you may risk losing your deposit for walking away from a deal that could happen. So just keep that in mind. Two other common ones would be a home sale contingency or a suitable housing clause. Both of these are used. The home sale contingency saying that my home must sell in order for me to buy your home, or the suitable housing that I must find a home to buy in order for me to sell you my home. These two can weaken an offer, but you do need to remember that if your clients need to do it in order to make it work, that you have to make that happen. Sometimes they're able to do a bridge loan where they can go between the two houses at once. Sometimes they're able to own both houses at once. But always talk with the mortgage professional about this and make sure that they understand that if they're going to be writing an offer and they're going to have a contingent, you most commonly need to make it contingent on the closing. So there's 3 different places where you can make it contingent, and in it you can say that they must have an accepted offer, or you could say they must have an accepted purchase and sale agreement, or you can say that they must have closed on the property. Remember, if the funding relies on it, you need to write that it must close on it. Saying that they need an accepted offer can get them into a deal that doesn't close out. And it doesn't say that it needs to close out. Therefore, it can enact as a problem that can lead to the loss of a deposit or the breaking up of a deal in a giant lawsuit. So to avoid getting in that mess, make sure that you say it's reliant on the closing. I usually suggest if you're going to stack deals that you usually leave a day or two between them. That way, if anything goes wrong or if anything needs to change day and time-wise, you have a little bit of wiggle room and the funding will be there. Usually the best way to do this is to hire a moving company where you can put the stuff in a 24-hour truck, or to have a place to go in between at a family's house or whatever works out there. I understand it can't always work out because it's sometimes a headache to temporarily store a family, but ultimately this makes everybody have a less stressful and more successful transaction. One of the next things you're going to see on the offer is representations and acknowledgments. This is a place where we can put down if there's a home warranty or anything else the agent told us about the property. Most commonly, I've seen on the industry, none written here. Buyer's default just goes over if the buyer defaults on their obligations, that all the monies tendered towards the deposit go to the seller for liquidated damages. Pretty easy to understand. Buyers can't just walk away from deals that they have obligations to. Just remind them that if they decide to walk away for no reason at all, that they may be deciding to walk away from money. Additional terms is one of these places where some agents get messy with it. They put way too much in, they ask for way too many things, and they get an offer kicked out over a simple item like a $400 washing machine that was used. Be careful here. Though you need to make sure you always follow the client's needs, make sure you advise them when they're making stupid decisions on additional terms in a multiple offer situation. Remember, this is a place where you can put seller's concession. Seller's concession is that money that's going to make the deal happen. The seller's concession can be that money for closing costs and prepaids. That way there, the client has enough money to put down as well as enough money to make the closing costs and prepaids happen. Remember, if you're going to put the money there and you're in a competitive marketplace and you need to have a full price offer, that if you're offering $380,000 on a $375 and you're asking for $5,000 back, that is a full price offer. But if you're offering $375 and you want $5,000 back in seller's concession, that's less than a full price offer. So make sure to scale accordingly for your seller's concession, and also make sure to talk to your mortgage professional about the seller's concession in the aspect of the fact that it can only be a certain percentage of the total loan value. Also reach out to the other agent if it's crucial to have that and say to them, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I know I have seller's concession involved in the offer, and I just wanted to let you know that it's a must do. So if there's anything to do with a counter, please make sure you leave the seller's concession involved because we need that to close. It's better to be honest up front than to hit them later with it. Some of the more common additional terms, though, would be appliances, as well as items like a hot tub or something that's not attached to the home, but you want to make sure it's there. Or if there's damages that you want fixed before you buy the home, it may be a good place to put it. Anything that's clear as day out there and your clients can see it and everyone can see it, you don't really want to wait and say, oh, we'll catch that at home inspection, because then you're already in a contract and you may not be able to get it. If you need to have it be that way, you need to write it right in this box right here, because if you don't, you're not going to have it in the future, and then you have the risk of your client not being able to negotiate it at that home inspectional period of time, and then them suing you because you said that they'd be able to get it. If you run out of space on the additional terms box, don't ever be afraid to use an addendum. An addendum is an added piece of paper that's going to have extra space to write on it. So you list C addendum A on there, and then right at the top of the addendum, write addendum A on that, and then you write your additional terms there. Always remember that when you're writing additional terms and everything, you are not an attorney, but you always want to think as complicated as you can. If you write could versus shall, it has two different meanings. So if you don't feel capable of writing an additional addendum, make sure you advise your client that this is a good time to get legal advice and to bring in a legal team. Always remember when writing an offer that it's a good thing to bring in the legal team, but it's also a good thing to know what you're doing. So you don't want to be too pushy about bringing in a legal team, but at the same time, when someone wants to do things that aren't exactly the way that you would do them, you really want to say to them, okay, well, if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that, but I really think you should get some legal advice. And remember, when you read an offer or a purchase and sale agreement, you're really just reading them verbatim what's there, and you're not explaining deeply what anything means. You're just looking for the information to fill out the boxes because you do not want to get in trouble for giving legal advice. So last but not least, let's talk about submitting that offer. When you go to submit the offer, you're going to submit the offer, an agency agreement form, the deposit check, a lead paint form if the house is pre-1978, a seller's disclosure if one's available, and then any additional documents that they may have attached to the listing. On the MLS, usually up in the top right corner of the screen, you'll find a little paperclip which will have the attachments on it where you can download them. Make sure you send them along with the offer to get signed by your clients so you have them all to go at the same time. Remember when you're submitting an offer that nowadays it's become common practice to send a picture or a scan of a check. First, don't have the check number on the bottom of the check or the routing number. Feel free to use a business card or something else to cover that over before you send it. For sending information over the internet, you got to be really careful about having those numbers because it's a live check. Second, when you send a check over to an agent to secure a deposit and they say it's secured, just mail it to me. This can be risky behavior. If you don't have it in writing, don't just send it, because there's been times in the past where an agent has had a property that has high interest and everyone's writing offers and someone submits late and they get an offer much higher than yours, but your deposit check is not there yet and they don't have it physically in their hands where they've challenged it. And the courts have ruled both directions, so be very, very careful during this. I always like to drop off my deposit checks if possible, and if not, like I said, I always have them send me a yes, it's okay to send email as well as a receipt email saying that they got it. A couple of last things I want to mention that can strengthen an offer is make sure you have a mortgage professional that everyone knows and trusts. And make sure when you're going to write an offer, have that mortgage professional reach out to the seller's agent and tell them about your people and tell them how good they are. You can also do a little letter where they write a little bit about themselves and how they can see themselves in the home and how they would really love to have the home and what they would do with it, whether it be for themselves or their family. Just tell them a little bit about what they would like to do with the house and how special it is and how much they like things like the gardens or whatever you think that the seller's favorite aspects of the house are. Don't feel funny selling the seller on their own home. What I mean is feel free to compliment them. They're really going to like this. Also, a photo of the buyer is another good way to get the sellers emotionally invested into the buyers and set up the deal so that they accept it. When you're in a multiple offer situation, you have a lot of offers out there. It's hard to stand out. So a little letter, these photos, reaching out to the agent, personally yourself, as well as having the mortgage broker reach out to them, can show some real interest in the property and separate you from the pack. When writing an offer, never fear being different. Always be okay with the idea of, if I write a different offer than everybody else, it's going to stand out. So what that means is if it's $350,000 and you go 351, 235, person looks at that number and they go, why'd they write that? Well, hey, you just did something. You just made it the difference, and you just got them emotionally invested. I hope you write a lot of offers this year in 2019. I hope you get them accepted. If you're looking for a job in real estate, join a winning team. We're looking to put on 15 agents this year and 100 next year. We'd love to have you over here at Momentum Realty. Follow us on our podcast. Check out our website at MovementumRealty.com. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend.